The views and opinions expressed by the individuals in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Metaphor Creative Media, its parent, or its affiliates.
As police officers, we're witness to some of the most amazing things in life. Some comical, some horrendous, and some just plain miraculous. When asked why you went into law enforcement, most officers will tell you, because it's like having a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. Today, we saved you a front row seat. This is Cobservations.
From Broadcast Beat Studios in Oakland Park, Florida, Metaphor Creative Media presents a show that gives you a personal glimpse of what law enforcement officers see and do in their typical and not so typical day of work. From walking the beat to detective, Rob has 35 years of law enforcement experience. Although the staff are all active or former law enforcement, any views, opinions, and all other show content are in no way official views, statements, or policies of any law enforcement agencies. To talk to our hosts, call the podcast studio at area code 954-210-5413. That's 954-210-5413.
Hello and welcome to Cobservations. My name is Rob L. and I'll be your host. If you haven't tuned in last week, this is our second edition. Last week was our inaugural edition of Cobservations. It's the podcast that we're going to put you in the front row to the greatest show on earth. We're going to talk about different topics, current, past topics, police topics, and we're going to have a great show tonight. Just before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I started my police career in 1984 with the New York City Police Department, and in 1985 I was assigned to the 60th Precinct in Coney Island. After 3 years, I was assigned to a plainclothes unit, and the following year I went to an investigative unit in that precinct. I vested out after 17 years with the department due to health issues that my wife was experiencing, and we moved to Florida and started with the sheriff's office. The guys in New York thought I was crazy because we had a 20-year retirement and I was 3 years short. But family comes first. I did what I had to do for my family. I left August 31st, 2001 and missed 9/11 by a few weeks. Looking back, it was the best decision I ever made. They say everything happens for a reason. Fast forward to 2003, I decided to write a book after so many people I had spoken to said, "You have so many stories, you should write a book." So I attempted to, and I interviewed anyone that would give me a story. Eventually, I had sent the book to an agent who didn't think there was a market for it at the time. My wife, who was my biggest critic at the time, said, "That's because your book sucks." Even though she denies it to this day. And fast forward to about a year and a half ago, I was talking with Danny and Tony, the producers of the show, and mentioned the book. They felt it might be a great idea for a podcast, and here we are. Hopefully this podcast will allow you to look at us a little differently. The stories you hear are meant to be enlightening and entertaining. So pull up a chair, make yourself comfortable. Feel free to call in at 954-210-5413. We always say this show is your front row seat to the greatest show on earth, but unfortunately sometimes it's also the saddest show on earth. Lately, every time we turn on the news, there's another story about officers dying from 911 related illnesses or being killed in the line of duty. Recently, New York City detective Lou Alvarez succumbed to 911-related cancer after enduring 68 bouts of chemotherapy. Detective Alvarez was a warrior until the end, fighting for the 9/11 compensation fund to be continued. Though he lost his battle with cancer, he won the war after the bill was passed through both the House and the Senate. The President is expected to sign this bill, which run through the years 2090. Sadly, this past Sunday, the Broward Sheriff's Office lost one of its own. Deputy Benjamin Nintz, who was just 30 years old, was killed in the line of duty while responding as a backup for a domestic violence call, and his vehicle was broadsided by a pickup truck. Deputy Nintz was transported to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. He leaves behind a wife and 2 small children. Deputy Nintz graduated from the Police Academy in 2018 and served with the United States Army. Our prayers go out to his family and the Broward Sheriff's Office. On a different note, sadly, a video depicting New York City police officers being doused with buckets of water was in the news. In one instance, which took place in Harlem, 2 officers, while making an arrest, were doused with water thrown from a bucket, and a 3rd officer was hit in the head with the bucket. The second incident, which occurred in Brooklyn, depicts 2 officers sopping wet, walking away as the buckets of water are dumped on them. The video was sickening to watch, not only because the officers were victimized by the people they have sworn to protect, but also because they took no action. At the very least, those responsible should have been arrested and charged right there on the spot. After the video went public, the New York PD's chief of department made a statement stating any cop who thinks that it's all right to walk away from something like that should maybe consider whether or not this is the right profession for them. This statement was made on Tuesday. I'm happy to say, as of Wednesday, 3 arrests have been made. Okay, that video was absolutely disgusting to watch. It sickened me. We protect people, and sometimes it's a very thankless job, unfortunately. The police walked away. To get respect, you have to give respect, but you also have to demand respect. And by walking away and not taking action at that time, they lost a lot of respect. Okay, we're the police. We enforce the laws. We're here to help people. We're not there to be abused. We don't get paid to be abused. We don't get paid to beat up. We don't get paid to be shot. We do this to help you. Thankfully, the police department did make arrests. The detectives got involved. They investigated. They were able to identify some suspects and were able to make that arrest. When I was coming up, the first thing I was told is at the end of the day, you go home. The most important thing you can do on this job as a police officer is to go home to your family. They say it's better to be tried by 12 than to be carried by 6. And I've always lived by that credo. Today, the state of affairs with the police department, we're painted in a very negative brush by everybody, politicians. In New York City, Mayor de Blasio has not really stood by his police. And some of the higher-ups as well have not. And it's very disheartening. If anyone wants to call, again, that number is 954-210-5413. Another topic I'd like to speak about tonight is compliance. Okay. In society, there are rules and regulations that everyone must or should obey. It starts in the home. There are rules at school, work, and play. And when we break those rules, there are consequences. At home, when our children don't listen, they're punished. At school, there's extra homework, detention, or suspension, depending on the severity of the infraction. At work, it could be demotion or termination. If there are no consequences and bad behavior goes unchecked, it can progress and the consequence is more severe. Out in the streets, break the laws and there are consequences. They can range from a verbal warning, citation, or physical arrest, depending on the infraction. So the word of the day is compliance, which means the art of complying with a desire, demand, or proposal. If we comply with the rules and regulations, obey the laws, there are no consequences. When dealing with law enforcement out on the street, the key word is compliance. A person doesn't have to like or agree with the situation at hand, but they do have to comply. It's the law. There are avenues that can be taken if you don't like or agree with the actions taken by law enforcement. During a traffic stop, the time to argue is not during the stop. You can disagree, but the time to argue is in the court of law, where both sides are presented to a judge. During an arrest, compliance is the key and saves lives, both the officers and the offenders. Very recently, the case of Eric Garner, who died in July of 2014 in Staten Island, New York, was back in the news after criminal charges were brought against the New York City police officers who allegedly choked Mr. Garner. The death was tragic, but totally unavoidable. The infraction Garner committed was selling loose cigarettes. It was a minor violation. Officers attempted to arrest Mr. Garner, but he refused to comply. He felt he was being harassed by the police and told them not to touch him. He was not violently resisting arrest, but did not comply. Mr. Garner was a large man, approximately 6'3", and weighed close to 400 pounds. Ultimately, he was taken to the ground and arrested and later died. There were contributing factors, but if Mr. Garner had complied and allowed the officers to take him into custody, he would still be here. There are different avenues to take if someone feels they are being unjustly treated. Resistance is not the avenue to take, be it verbal or physical. Everyone gets their day in court. We should be teaching our children how to respect and interact with the police. The mayor of New York has been quoted as saying that he had to teach his son, who is biracial, how to interact with the police for his own safety. His son was also said that he's in fear of the police after having talks with his parents about the threat to black youth. During the Democratic debates, Mayor de Blasio mentioned conversations he had with his son about the dangers police pose to young black citizens in America. Conversations like this instill fear in children. I can't tell you how many times I've heard parents say to their children, "See that policeman? If you don't behave, he's going to take you away." That's the worst thing you can say to a child. We don't want children to be afraid of us. We want them to come to us if they're lost or if there's a problem. It's not our job to make your children listen to you. It's yours. It's called parenting, and it starts at home. When my children were younger, I, as a police officer, too, taught them how to interact with the police. Not just for their safety, but for the officers' safety as well. When they were old enough to drive, I told them if they were stopped, especially at night, to turn on the interior light, roll down the windows, turn off the engine, and keep your hands on the steering wheel. Then it was yes, sir, no, sir. It's common sense. We need to teach everybody how to interact with the police. It's not a black and white issue. It's a people issue. Okay? And we're going to take a break, and we'll be back shortly. And hey, welcome back to Conservations. One thing I want to say, this is our second show, and we're trying to get things down. My first show, when I got home, I had a couple of critiques from my wife and a few people that I know said, "Hey, stop swiveling." The first episode, if you watched it, I was constantly going back and forth. Not sure if it was nerves or not, but I was doing it. Today, the nerves are there a little bit. This is brand new. This is a first-time experience for me. And hopefully, well, I know we will get better each time. The more we do it, the better we get. After the repetition, we'll get there. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. And it's going to be a great experience for everybody involved. Tonight, I have a special guest, John McCray. He's a retired New York City detective who I not only had the pleasure of working with for years ago in Coney Island, but I introduced him to my sister, who he ultimately ended up marrying, and to this day, he still blames me.
That's right. I'm never going to let you away with it either.
The best thing that ever happened to you was me.
Yeah. No, it was the best thing.
Yeah. John, you started your police career back in
1980.
1980. It was a different world back then.
Much different.
Same thing with me. I started a few years later, 1984. There was a lot more respect on the street. I think it's what happened with the old-timers that had come on the job. When I was a kid, there was respect. You didn't talk back to a police officer. A lot of times if you saw him coming, a police officer coming, you were just hanging out on the corner out of respect or out of fear. You went on your way.
Well, it wasn't even fear. It was just the right thing to do. You know, all of a sudden you look at yourself and say, am I doing the right thing with what I'm doing here? Should I be here or shouldn't I be here? Makes you think.
And it did. And back then, too, if you remember, you heard the stories if the police ever brought somebody home. They were more worried about the beating they were going to get from their parents than actually getting stopped by the police.
Exactly. You know, it's even not a beating. It's just grounding or whatever it was, just the disappointment of, you know, a cop bringing you home to your parents. I mean, the biggest thing, like, to me would be, you know, like if a cop would bring me home, it'd be my father would just give me a look. I mean, forget about it. That would crush me.
And I would imagine that would be some look.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and the thing is today, it's funny, when the police get involved, a lot of times, more often than not, when they bring somebody home, it's the cops that catch grief. You know, what did you do to my kid?
Well, exactly. You know, it's like, they look at you like, you're bringing him home. Why are you doing this? Why are you picking on my kid? What's the other option? You know, you get a phone call to come down to the precinct because now the kid's getting arrested, and he's going to have to, here's your desk appearance ticket to bring him to juvenile court. I mean, would you rather have me bring him home and say he's over here throwing eggs on someone's house, or would you rather get him locked up for criminal mischief?
You
You
know,
know, they don't think of it that way, that you're trying to do them a favor, that you could straighten this kid out now. You know, if he's, it's just for an example, Halloween, they throw eggs. Okay, fine. You know, it's not the worst thing in the world. They shouldn't do it, but, what's the next step? What's the next thing? You know, from eggs to a rock through someone's window.
right, it progresses.
It
The
does.
progression.
It just keeps on going.
You know, and the funny thing is, years ago, we had a lot of discretion on how we handled a lot of calls. You know, traffic tickets, it was always a summons was issued at your discretion. You had the discretion. On the street, you dealt with things, and a lot of times you were able to deal with it right then and there. Now, with the body cameras, body cameras now have taken a lot of the discretion away. Everything is recorded. They're good and they're bad in the sense of what you can and can't do. It's good. It keeps everybody honest. Okay. It also cuts down on the false complaints that are made by people against the
Well,
police.
yeah, the cameras, they would do that, but you're wearing a horn. You wear enough stuff. Why do you have to wear a camera? You're a police officer. You're sworn to protect and serve. You're not, a lot of these people, they don't want a camera there for you to, for you to, record everything you do. I mean, for crying out loud, that's why you're a policeman. You're supposed to be, that little bit above that, above a little bit of reproach. You can be trusted to do things. That's why you're out there with a gun and you're wearing a vest and you're driving around and you're trying to help people. That's the whole thing. You're putting your life on the line every day. You don't know what's the next thing that's going to happen, is jump up in your face. You have no idea. You know it just as well as I do.
No, absolutely. You don't know from one moment to the next.
No, you don't know.
One moment, we discussed this last week with my guest Gary. One minute you could be sitting in the car having a cup of coffee or just having lunch, and the next thing, it hits the fan. It hits the fan. You have to be prepared to react and take action at that moment, at any given moment.
Well, you just never know whenever anything is going to blow up, you don't know where it's going to blow up. Is it going to blow up in your face? Is it going to be in a friend's face on the other side of the precinct, or a neighboring precinct, or something else? You have no idea, but it's you can have a lot of boredom, and then all of a sudden it's giant chaos.
All right, you go from 0 to 60.
0 to 100, you never know what the heck is going to go on.
John, now you saw the video with the bucket throwing the water on the police
Yes,
officers.
I did.
And what were your feelings when you saw it?
I was shocked. I mean, I could see that, that type of, I could understand and see that, I should say I expect that sometimes it's going to happen, that people are going to throw water at you or this and that. I had a lot worse than water thrown at me. But the thing is, to see these guys walking away, very sheepishly walking away from it, and people coming up behind them and dumping stuff on them, throwing a bucket and hitting the guy in the head with it.
Yeah, it hurt.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it hurt. It's funny. I remember years ago, I was standing on the corner. I was walking the footpost in Coney Island. I was on Mermaid Avenue in West 24th Street, and it was a sunny day. It was beautiful out. And as I'm standing there, all of a sudden, a stone about the size of a hardball just misses me. And I'm looking around like, what the hell was that?
From the buildings.
From the buildings. And then a few minutes later, it started raining stones. And I ducked inside to the store. There was a corner store. And I ducked inside and eventually was able to make my way out. And I went to the building. And when I got to the roof of that building, Naturally, there was nobody there, but the whole roof was covered in these stones. The stones were there for drainage.
Yeah.
And I remember I went back to the command and I told I told my supervisor what had happened. Well, there was a meeting. They met with the manager of the building, and within a day or two, every stone on that roof was removed.
Well, that's good, but the other things that we used to get over there, the batteries that were thrown out, babies' diapers were thrown out. I mean, everything but the kitchen sink. Well, even then, some of that came out too. But you see from some of these places. I mean, people, they don't have any respect for you. You can understand that. Not everyone's going to be doing that.
No.
But there are some good people there, and there are some bad people there.
I would say the majority of the people out there support us. A lot of the people support us and are pro-police.
Well, I think they support us, with the jaundiced eye, a lot of people. They'll support us with the jaundiced eye. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But, they shouldn't be talking like that or putting restrictions on you, until you walk a mile in my shoes.
Exactly, and that's a great point that you bring up, because that's what I'm hoping that this podcast will do, based upon the stories that I tell and people tell, the things that they've gone through, almost put somebody in our shoes, okay, in a safe way, okay, not to experience exactly everything that we've done or been through, but to see the things that we do. We're human. We're human. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. Okay.
Sure, we all do.
But I know the majority of us go out there every day, not knowing if we're going to come back, trying to do the best job possible for everybody, for ourselves, for our families, and for the public.
Well, that's it. You never know when your job is to get home in one piece, without any extra holes in you.
Absolutely.
All right, and it doesn't always work out that way. You end up coming home with stitches from this and that. You don't want to call home and say, I'm at the hospital getting stitches or whatever like that. I mean, that happened with Marcia. She called up looking for me and said, oh, he's in the hospital getting the stitches in his leg. And, of course, she didn't take that very well.
Right.
I'm glad we didn't have, really cell phones then, but, I'm glad I didn't have them, because they've been ringing off the wall, But people don't realize what we have to do.
You know what they don't realize either, and sometimes we don't realize, aside from what we do, or the things we have to do, is what our families go through. I know when I'm at work at any given day, I know what I'm doing. I know I'm okay. I don't worry about myself. I don't think about the worries that possibly my wife has, or my children have had, or my parents have had while I was at work. And especially there were times where it would come over the news immediately, cop shot. Until they would announce where it was. Sometimes it would happen. I'd get on the phone and say, hey, I'm okay. It's not me, I'm okay.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's very true. Especially when they say that, there's a cop shot, and, for wherever you were working. Like where I was working, I used to work in, I was a narcotic, so my aunt would be worried about me and everything before, I met Marcia and everything. But when I ended up I went from the robbery squad there, I ended up in Brooklyn North.
Right, which is a busy place.
It's a very busy place, but we covered all of Brooklyn.
Right.
So anytime she heard about a plainclothes cop, she was thinking of you, she was thinking of me, she was thinking of all, the friends that we have.
Sure.
She knew all of these people too. And the last thing you want to do is hear about, there was a cop shot in the 6-0 in Coney Island.
Right.
Something like that.
Funny that you mentioned that. I remember, I'm not sure the year right now, it was in the late 80s. I was getting ready for work. I had just taken a shower and I got into my car. And as I'm driving, the news report comes on and it says, Officer Joe Campbell. And right away my ears perked up, because I worked with the Joe Campbell in Coney Island. We covered Coney Island, parts of Bensonhurst and Brighton Beach. Is in critical but stable condition after a shootout. And as I'm listening to this, the thoughts that are going through my mind are, I hope it's not the Joe Campbell that I know.
Yeah.
And then it said after a shootout in Brighton Beach. So I was like, wow. When I got into work that day, I was told, hey, listen, get into your uniform and go to Kings County Hospital you're going to be assigned to Joe. And I remember when I got there, he was out of surgery, and his family was on the way in. And I remember him laying there, and he still had blood on his feet from everything that was going on. I remember telling the nurse, "Hey, listen, his mom's on the way here. You need to clean him up." And when he got home, I was assigned to him for two weeks. I remember what happened was him and his partner had responded to, I believe it was supposed to be, originally it was a burglary, but it turned out to be a home invasion. And they did everything right. Technically they did everything right. They parked a few houses away, and they walked up to the location. When it was 4 steps up to the house, and the door, I think it was like a 9-foot door. It had an eyebrow window on the top, so they couldn't see in. And as they were going through the door was opening, and the bad guy was coming out. And his back was towards them, and they spun him around. And as they spun him around, he was on, I believe it was a .357 Magnum, and he fired around, and it hit Joe in the gun belt. It went through, hit him in the stomach, and as he was going down, he and Rocco, his partner, returned fire, and they killed the guy. So, it was a week, 2 weeks later, I'm at Joe's house, and we're talking, and New York City Police Department has a 3/4 disability pension. And I always jokingly said, "Hey, listen, if a bullet even came this close to me, I'm done, I'm quitting." And Joe and I were talking, and he said to me, "Yeah, Bobby, I don't know what I want to do." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "I don't know if I should put in for 3/4 or stay on. I want to be a sergeant." And I remember saying to him, "You're out of your mind. Take them. You were shot. You're lucky to be alive. Take the money and run." And I remember him telling me that the doctor said it was a good thing he got shot in the belt. It went through the gun belt, because the gunman being so close to him, if he was shot in the vest, it would have killed him. Just from the blunt trauma would have killed him. Would have killed him. So Joe stayed on the job, and he rose up the ranks. I think he's retired now, but I'm not sure if he was a deputy inspector or a full inspector. But here's a guy who gets shot, could have got out on a disability, loved the job, got promoted to sergeant, which is what he wanted, and then continued to rise through the ranks. And remember, Joe Campbell was always a gentleman, always a gentleman. So you never know.
He was almost another statistic.
Absolutely.
An inch, a little bit higher or lower, and he could have bled out in a few minutes, before he could even get him to a hospital.
Right, guys, I want to remind you, if anybody'd like to call in and join the conversation, or if you have a different topic you'd like to bring up, feel free to call in, 954-210-5413. Hey, John, people always ask, why'd you become a cop? Okay, and the answers all vary. So I'm going to ask you, why'd you become a cop?
I don't know. It's my father always wanted one of us to be in the police. He always wanted to be a cop.
So you're like an Irish doctor. yeah, every Irish parent's dream. Right?
Yeah. But I ended up going into the police department. At first, I worked for the Transit Authority, and which he loved that idea. And then it became, of course, I had to take every civil service test that came down the pike. He'd be telling me, "Well, don't be busy Saturday because you have to do something."
Yeah.
That's how it was. At least in my house it was. You did what you were told, and you're going to take this test. He had me taking more tests than I knew what about. Every test that came out, he made me take it.
Yeah, I think in my house it was a little different. I don't think my parents were too keen on the idea of me being a cop.
No,
I don't think so. I think they wanted something more for me, or something better, something safer. Yeah.
Well, you never know what is safe today.
That's true. Hey, look, a teacher's a very dangerous job today.
That's very, very true. I mean, teachers, they don't get any respect in a classroom.
No, not at all. They should get hazardous pay.
Well, they should. I mean, sometimes some of these classes that they have some of these kids in, I mean, they don't need to have a teacher. They need a teacher, and the teacher needs to have a partner there with them, for when they turn it back to write on the blackboard, you got to have someone to look at the kids.
Yeah, they need bodyguards.
It's very true. It's very true.
Let me ask you, what's the biggest thing that you enjoyed about being in law enforcement?
The biggest thing I enjoyed about law enforcement, every day that I went to work, it wasn't a day going to work. It was, I went to play with my friends. It was like, every day you're going out, you're playing cowboys and Indians,
Cops and robbers.
Cops, robbers, cowboys and Indians, whatever it was. But I just enjoyed every minute of it. I wish I could do it over again.
Maybe not today.
No, not today.
Maybe not today.
Not today, but
turn back the clock and make things the way they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
yeah, well, you can't turn the clock back, but they need to they got to turn back some of these programs that they have going on with no, stop and frisk or anything like that. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
You need this.
That stop and frisk program was a program back in New York, and it was a tool. It was a tool that worked very well. What's the most thing? What did you dislike the most about the job?
What I dislike the most. Well, I dislike not being at home on holidays. I hated doing things like that, but it went with the turf. That's how it went. It went with the job. A lot of times you couldn't be home when you wanted to be home. You were doing something else. There was a Father's Day I couldn't be home because we got into, when I was in Brooklyn robbery, up in Brooklyn North over there on Washington Avenue, we had that thing with the kidnapping. And we went for, I think it was 4 days straight. And when it came time for that, for Father's Day on that Sunday, we we were still working. The kids got to see me on TV, but
they didn't get to see you. All right. On that note, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in 6 minutes. And again, if anybody would like to call in and join the conversation, please call in at 954-210-5413. We'll be back shortly.
My name is Rebecca. I started using opiates at the age of 14. This drug addiction has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me, like everything. And I'm so exhausted. I know that these next few days aren't gonna be pretty, and I'm the most camera shy person in the world, but if making my detox public is gonna help somebody, even literally just one person, I'm all for it. I was an athlete. I danced and cheered, and I was tumbling at cheerleading practice, and I blew my ankle out, and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor.
Rebecca's story is like so many others. You see it begin right at childhood.
Her addiction really started very innocently. She was a very accomplished dancer as an adolescent and had an ankle injury at the age of 14. Her medical treatment escalated to the use of very, very powerful opioid medications very early on.
This disease does not discriminate at all. It looks exactly the same, and it will take you to the exact same places. It doesn't matter what town you live in.
They say that you make a conscious decision to get high, to do drugs. I didn't know. I trusted my doctor to take care of me and make me better. There was no caution, no red flag at all. It was take these, you'll feel better, and that was it. And then 2 months later, I had a habit already, just from the pain pills. So that's when the heroin started.
Today is the second day of Rebecca's detox. She has not used any substances for over 24 hours now. She is experiencing exactly what one would expect under these circumstances. She's very tired. Her body is starting to ache.
It's like you're hot, but you're cold at the same time, and you're sweating. You can't get comfortable, and every move you make, it's like you're running a marathon. Like, it takes all your energy. It's just draining.
I remember the day that Rebecca is having right now. I was feeling achy and tired, where you feel like you're pushing against 1,000 pounds of like water.
I've never felt this way before in my life. I hope I never have to feel this way again either.
Hi, Rebecca. How are you? Really?
I've been sleeping a lot. This thing I want to say first on my arm
Okay.
is like absolutely killing me.
Right here?
Yeah, that's the spot. My hands are more swollen today than they were yesterday, and we're trying to figure out the cause of it.
Yesterday, you asked her when she looked at herself in the mirror, what do you see? And she said nothing. That's what she sees right now, because she is spiritually void. And that's okay, that's where you're supposed to be. So now what you do is every day you ask whatever's out there to help you fill that void.
I have a lot of self-image issues, and my mind doesn't tell me anything nice.
People often find that when they've been dependent on opiates for a long time, whether it's for pain management or for other reasons, and they can get off, it's incredibly liberating.
I feel like I'm coming back from the dead completely, because there was no life in me whatsoever, and each day that passes, I feel more and more alive.
I get really emotional. I was that girl sitting down there, you know, but I had a little daughter. I was, 17 years in and out of these rooms of treatment centers, you know, from the time I was 17 to 30 years old. And today I have a life that is, I'm free.
I told her all you have to do is worry about the 24 hours you're in. You wake up in the morning, and you take care of the 24 hours you're in.
I want the next girl that gets injured dancing to know what the future could hold by the next decision that she makes. Because, like, that decision I made to go to the doctors and to not get the surgery, that affected, that's the worst decision I ever made in my whole life. I'm not this person. I'm gonna be more than this. I want that white picket fence. To be honest, I want the most boring, repetitive life. Like, I want to be square so bad. This is like a turning point, a new start, like a new chance, and I'm gonna run with it.
Hey, sports fans, and welcome back to Observations. While we're on the break, we've got TV monitors playing, and Fox News is showing the episodes of the cops being doused with the buckets of water. And it's definitely national news, and again, every time I watch it, I can feel my blood pressure just rise. And I think a lot of the reason being is that this goes on is some of the policies in New York have been changed. They've been reduced, or they've lightened up on the policies, where back when we were police officers and walked the beat or rode in the radio cars, they were quality of life violations that they wanted to enforce.
Yes,
Thinking that
they were good.
you start with the small things and it helps prevent larger problems from happening.
Yes, it does.
And now the pendulum, they say this pendulum swings both ways, and now it's swinging back where it's out of control. It's just totally out of control what people are doing.
Well, that's it. They're not showing any respect to the police, like the dousing of water and stuff. You wouldn't think of ever doing something like that to any policeman or anybody.
Okay? I wouldn't talk back to a cop.
Yeah, but you wouldn't. You know, when we were growing up, you were taught not to speak that way. You know, in school or
to anybody.
To anybody,
Right.
at all.
Absolutely.
There's no reason to do that.
No, and the big thing now is everybody's talking about, oh, it's free speech. It's my First Amendment right. It's, you know, they go on and they go on. It's my First Amendment right, but there has to be a line drawn. I remember years ago, I was working at the airport and we were in a high alert. So pretty much what happened was somebody came to pick up a passenger. They couldn't stay there unless their people were out. Once people were out and they were, loading up the vehicle, you could take as much time as you wanted. And I was working one day, and a car pulls up, and I said to the guy, I said, "Excuse me, sir, you can't stay here. We're in a high alert. You're going to have to circle. When your party's out, you can take as much time as you need." And he's giving me a hard time, just arguing back and forth with me. And he was a little bit older than me at the time. And we're going back and forth, and I said, "Listen, once they're out, you can spend as much time as you need, but you're going to have to circle now. We're in high alert." And all of a sudden, he pulls out a police badge. Okay, so this works both ways. He pulls out a police badge and says to me, "Hey, does this help?" And I looked at him, I said, "No, absolutely not." And it was because of the way he came off to me in the beginning. We try to extend courtesy whenever we can. And I wouldn't only do that to police officers. There were so many people that would pull up to me at the airport and say, "Hey, he's on his way out. Can you just give me 2 minutes?" And a lot of times I'd say, "All right, I'll give you 2 minutes under one condition. You have to talk to me." And I would talk to him. I would spend a couple of times and we would talk, and lo and behold, the person would come out and everybody was happy. It made my job easy because I didn't have to argue with anybody. So getting back to this other guy, he circles around, and finally he comes out and his party comes out and he's having some conversation with his son. And his son comes walking up to me and looks at me, and this is the son of a police officer, and tells me, "Hey, go F yourself." And I looked at him. I said, "What?" And he had no problem repeating it. He said, "Hey, go F yourself. It's my First Amendment right." And I remember getting so mad and so angry that this is the son of a police officer, and this guy is standing right there. So, it was just, I was amazed. I really couldn't believe it. It was...
Well, if he was a cop, he should know better.
Absolutely.
He should have known better, and he shouldn't have let his son do something like that.
No, if my son had done something like that, there would be consequences.
Yes, there would be
serious consequences.
Yes, there would be.
Recently, too, there's another video that they're showing from New York, the New York subway system. Aside from the buckets being thrown at these police officers, there were 2 police officers on a subway train. And on the train, a male gets right in their face. And he's being belligerent, and he's really in their personal space. He's getting really close, and he's saying to this police officer, "Hey, suck my dick." And the police officers are just standing there. They're engaging him in conversation, and yes, it's free speech, and this gentleman keeps going on and keeps repeating this to the police officers, and also stating the fact that this is his First Amendment right, and people are filming it and people are laughing. But there's got to be a line. Where do you draw the line with free speech?
Well, the thing is, like, all right, he's in the middle of a subway car, and he's saying it's his First Amendment right. He can say that. Yeah, you can say that, but it's not someone else's duty to have to listen to. There's other people on the train car. All right, a New York City train is never very empty.
No,
there's
that's
other
for sure.
people there, and they don't have to listen to it. When does his free speech become, an excuse to someone else's right not to hear that type of language, so they can read a book or listen to a radio or have their little kid look out a window and watch things going on? When does his rights violate everyone else's rights? That's not true. That's what he was doing. That was disorderly conduct.
Yeah, absolutely.
That wasn't free speech. That was disorderly conduct. And that's the reason to arrest. Okay, that's how I see it anyway. Maybe they're told not to bring things into the station house like that anymore, but I don't know. When I was a policeman, this was not tolerated, and nor should it be. The little things, like you say, like this guy, he's doing this on the train. What is his next step? What is the next one? They threw buckets of water on the cops. Well, what's the next step? Rocks, bricks, and then after that, what is it going to be? It just keeps on escalating. People are in the streets. They don't want to hear this guy cursing and this and that. They're on a train. They're going to work or they're going home. Who wants to hear this guy screaming? Nobody. The cops don't want to hear it, but his rights now infringe on everyone else's rights. That's this gun. He's got to go. That's how I see it anyway. He should.
And that's how, as I'm talking to the Fox TV's on the background, and
oh yeah, okay.
they're showing the kids throwing buckets of water on themselves, but also the police car is in the background and also getting doused, and that's the police car. Hey, they're washing the car for free. I don't know. It's just amazing the things that go on.
Yeah, well, if the parents can't teach their kids how to respect a policeman or a fireman, or an ambulance driver, something like that, how can they expect the police to come back and treat them seriously? Or a fireman to treat them seriously, or an EMS worker?
Well, the thing is, too, there's also a lack of respect at home. If you've gone to some of these houses and you see some of the kids speak to their parents with a total lack of respect. And it starts home.
I know it starts at home. But, all of these people that think this is cute, it's only water. Oh, the cops, they showed great restraint, someone said today.
Yes, I've heard that. Great restraint.
They showed great restraint.
Above and beyond.
Yes. But I disagree. Those two cops should have turned around and started making arrests.
Well, can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? If the police officers had buckets of water on them and just started drenching people? Can you imagine the uproar?
Those cops would be in jail today.
Yeah. Their careers would be finished.
Done. Finished.
Right.
Over.
Mm-hmm. But yet it's acceptable for them to be victimized.
Well, I don't see how that, because I don't see how they can walk into a station house and that be accepted. When you and I were cops and stuff, that was not acceptable. If that was going on, you made an arrest.
Absolutely. And
if it started getting too hairy, yeah, that's what the radio's for. You call for backup, more people come.
Absolutely. I remember, in the height of the police department, I think we were 48,000 strong in New York City Police Department. It was actually ranked the 9th largest army in the world at one point. And I remember one of the instructors saying, they were talking about gang violence and confrontations with gangs. I remember him saying, "Hey, just remember, we have the biggest gang out there."
I said that to a guy once. I locked him up for something. I forget what it was, but the one thing I do remember, he said he's going to have his gang get me. I said, my gang's bigger than your gang.
Exactly. Tell him, bring it on.
Anytime you want to. But it's things like that. They need to go back to the policies like they had under Giuliani. All right, I didn't agree with everything they did, but the policies that they have for policing, they were really great. Okay, and you were trusted to do your job. All right, you're not second guessing. Well, if I do this, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to be? Am I going to get locked up for something or this? You can't be afraid to do your job. If that's what you're going to be, then that's not your job for you. Yeah. And maybe the job isn't for people. If politicians want to run the police department instead of letting the police run the police department, okay, let the police do their job. Don't try to do something that you don't know what you're doing. Don't make policies that are ridiculous and don't take away the tools that we have or the things that really do work.
Absolutely. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Well, quality of life and stuff, beer drinking, someone's is out in the street, loud noises at, all hours of the night. These things are being tolerated. What about the poor guy who has to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he's got to go to work? He's going to be working for 10 hours.
Well, it's the same thing now with the legalization of the marijuana, medical marijuana, and a lot of times the police are told, "Hey, listen, if they're smoking marijuana, just let it go." Just where years ago, it was an arrestable offense back then. But times change. Everything evolves. So does policing.
Well, yeah. Well, what's the next step? Well, he's shooting up heroin. Don't worry about it. Just keep on going.
Yep.
He's only doing it to himself. Well, they're not.
Yep.
It's one step more, one step more, one step more. It's some people smoke marijuana, but a lot of people who got really hooked on drugs, that was their gateway drug. You see, you've seen these poor souls out there. They're walking ghosts.
Right.
These junkies.
Oh, and we had the crack epidemic back
crack.
years ago, back in the 80s, and
I was assigned to the special anti-crack unit.
I never even heard of that unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gone now. I mean, that was out of Humboldt Street.
So I remember one of my partners used to call crack the body snatcher drug. People would do crack, and within weeks they were a third of the size that they were.
Oh yeah. You see people. I mean, they wasted away, and it just got to the point you did not recognize the same person. A year later, if you saw the same person, you could not tell it was the same person.
Absolutely.
I mean, it ate them alive.
Yeah, it certainly did. John, in our profession, things aren't always what they appear to be, and it's very easy to underestimate somebody based upon their physical appearance and their demeanor. I know years ago, you had one such encounter years ago when you were back on patrol.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Yes.
Yeah, you had told me that story a long time ago. Would you mind sharing it with us?
Yeah, no problem. It was in the early 80s, like 81 or 82. And, there weren't many cops around at that point. So it was on a late tour, and I think there were two cars working, 70 North and 70 South. That's all it was, And we went to a dispute. That's all they could say, that 911 didn't know the whole thing. It was just a dispute. So we get there, and there's a man standing on the front stoop. It's like a 3-story walk up, and he's on the front of the place. And you get out of the car, we go to him, and you can see that he's been punched in the face several times. And he didn't speak English very well at all. Like, what happened? What happened? And he kept on pointing. He goes, inside, my wife, my wife, my wife. All right. So we go in, we go up, it's like on the second floor, and we go into the apartment, and there's a whole bunch of people in the living room. And an old lady crying and screaming, and I guess she was the mother or whatever. And all these people, when you got closer, you look, they were all bloodied. Everyone who has a fat lip, who has a bloody nose, who's holding their eye. And the house is all, kind of disarrayed also. I said, well, who did this? What's going on? And he starts pointing to another room. He goes, my wife, my wife, my wife. So we tried to open a door, but there was stuff against the door. It turned out to be, we pushed the door open, and the bed was against the door. So we get in there, and we're looking around trying to find the wife. And we get around, and there was a dresser that was pulled away from the wall a little bit. And I look behind there, and there's this little Spanish woman, very young but beautiful woman, and she's laying on the floor. And she hears me. I'm saying, are you okay? Are you okay? And she starts getting up. And she's like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay.
And how big was this woman?
Oh, she was like about 5 feet tall, maybe like 100 pounds, 110 pounds soaking wet.
And you at the time are 6 feet tall?
Yeah, I was 6 feet tall and 220 pounds.
Right.
And, my partner, Jimmy, he was about the same size, a little bit skinnier than me, but, we're looking around like, what happened? I'm saying, what happened? And she's like shaking her head a little bit. And she got up from behind there and she stood in front of the dresser. And then she just picked the dresser up and hit me with it. I didn't believe my eyes. This little girl was picking up this whole dresser. And she hit me right in the face. I mean, I just didn't believe this happened. I thought she knocked all my teeth out. I was trying to feel my teeth, and I pushed the dresser off me, and she's beating the crap out of my partner. She come off and she kicked him in the stomach, like she was some type of ninja or something. She was pounding on him like forgot about it. So I'm thinking, holy crap. I jump on top of her. I try to pull her off him. She's elbowing me, kicking him and me at the same time, headbutting me backwards. We rolled around in that bedroom, the three of us, fighting, trying to get handcuffs on her for a good 20 minutes. And it was one heck of a fight. At one point, I was holding on to it, and she bit me in the neck. And she did not want to let go. So, it was one heck of a fight. Now, of course, the husband did not help, nor did anyone else in the outside room. They knew better.
Right.
We didn't know.
They already had a taste.
Yeah, but we didn't know this tiny little lady, she's going to turn into a monster. So, we finally got the handcuffs on her, and it was one hell of a time trying to do it. I never saw someone this strong.
Hey, I just want to say hi to Mike Vaughn.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, Mikey called in. His comment was two great guys. Thank you,
Hi, Mikey.
Thanks, Mike. Back in the old 6-0 days, Coney Island.
Yeah.
It was a great time.
Good man.
Hello, Marcia. Marcia says hello. She said,
Hey,
Marcia. De Blasio is ruining it for the entire country. Not only New York City, but the entire country.
Yeah, well, that's true. It is true. Who was it? I think it was the chief of police from Miami. He was on the news today, and he was telling de Blasio, you better get something done because this is going to spread and it's going to get worse. And he's right.
Absolutely.
It will. It will. But, like with that woman, she bit me in the neck. I had a brand new shirt I put on that day, and I had blood all over it. I looked like a mess.
It's always when you put a new shirt on.
Or new pants.
Okay. Also, we just want to remind our viewers that if you do want to call in and get involved, please call at 954-210-5413. The lines are open and waiting for you to call. We're going to take a really quick break, and we'll come back with our guest, John McCray. We'll be back shortly.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
right, pal. Get ready for the day, buddy.
Hey, Dad. Hey, Dad. Do we have a gun?
What's up?
Do we have a gun?
Why do you ask that, kiddo?
Can I play with it?
No, absolutely not. It's not a toy. You know that.
Do I? I bet it looks like one.
Yeah, well, it's not. Anyway, I need it to protect you, your sister and Mom.
From what?
From bad guys, like on TV.
But what about the 8 kids who get shot every day by mistake? Their daddies probably thought they were safe too.
Where'd you hear that?
TV.
Yeah, well, maybe we don't believe everything we hear on TV.
Where do you keep it?
It's hidden.
I bet it's on the top shelf of the closet, under your sweatshirts. Is it loaded?
It's not. I keep the
In
bullets.
the boots with the red laces, in the chest beside the bed? I haven't found them yet, but I'm sure I can. You always told me to be curious. Remember when I found my Christmas gift? I'm a good climber, you know.
No, that's not what I meant. Look, I need to be ready if someone breaks in.
What about when it's just me and Mom? You taught me to be brave. I could use the gun to protect her.
No, Justin, I promise. I'll teach you how to handle a gun when you're old enough.
And what if I don't make it to old enough? I could get bullied and decide it's too much for me. It would be so easy with our gun.
Our gun? No, buddy. My gun.
But it is our gun. In our home. Happens all the time.
I'll make sure that doesn't happen. I'm always here for you.
But Dad, you're not always here.
Hey, we want to remind our viewers to call into the podcast studio at 954-210-5413. So getting back to your story, John, brand new shirt full of blood, and that was pretty much the end of it.
Brand new shirt. Yes, and after that, it's while we were fighting in there, the dispatcher was trying to get in touch with us for a disposition. We never answered. We couldn't answer the radio, so she called an 85 on us.
And for those who don't know what an 85 is, an 85 is for additional backup to send more units out there. There are 3 different codes in the New York City Police Department. An 85 would be for a backup. 85 forthwith would be to step it up, and a 1013 would be send the cavalry.
But one car showed up because there was only one other car in the precinct. But they came at that point when we were leaving the place. With this woman in handcuffs, and she was fighting every inch of the way there too. And the thing was, what can you do with this poor soul? 'Cause she was crazy.
Did you ever find out if she was on any narcotics, or was it just a...
I don't know if she was on narcotics or what, but our thing was, to get her over to Kings County, the hospital, and she was EDP'd. They took her there. They gave her a shot, and that calmed her down right away. The worst part was the husband didn't want to go with her.
Right.
And I said, I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, get in the car. You're going with her. He did not want to go. You're going.
He had enough.
I had enough. That's it. He's going. No, it's his wife, not mine. So he's going to take care of his wife in the hospital. I'm not sitting there all night. He's going to mind her. I had to come back to the precinct.
Gotcha.
But it wasn't a pleasant thing with all the, I had to stop by the emergency room to get the doctor to make sure I didn't have some kind of disease in there.
Right.
Clean it up and put a patch on my neck.
You turn into a vampire. This time I'd like to give a shout out to our producers, Danny and Tony, because they told me I should say hello. So, guys, hello. Hey, everybody. Okay. And believe it or not, we have our first caller. So I'm going to pick up this call with Fred. Hey, Fred, you're on the air. Hello, Fred? Fred?
Hi.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Hey,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. I'm still learning how to work these controls. It's not as easy as I make it look.
All right. Doing a great job, guys. Both great podcast here. I hate to take you guys off track.
No, please
do.
Please do take us off track.
The cops getting doused. I'm retired NYPD. The cops getting doused up in New York City. It's horrible to watch. It's sad. But on one of the other Facebook websites, they did show that there was a finest message released, and I think this really addresses the root of what the bigger problem was. I don't want to point fingers, but you don't want to be a Monday morning quarterback. But I don't think some of the people doing that job today can think the way we had to think when we did it. I was hired in 1990, and we are a different generation. And I worked the majority in the projects. And, if you couldn't think on your feet doing that job, no matter where you were, if you couldn't think on your feet, if you didn't know what you were doing, you were food for the wolves. And I don't think some of these guys understand. I mean, just initially I was like, how guy getting hit in the head with a bucket while he's effecting arrest, how does somebody not get locked up for obstruction of governmental administration at the lowest level?
Hey, how about assault? Assault 3.
Yeah, assault. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just for starters, if you want to grasp at straws, you got something here. You got OGA is always a great thing, and DISCON. But they released a finest message. I won't read the whole thing, but they did outline 4 charges that they said, any officers encountering this should be able to effect an arrest for, and one of them is obstructing governmental administration, 2nd degree. Second was criminal tampering in the 3rd degree. Third was harassment in the 2nd degree, and 4th was disorderly conduct. And they follow this up with members of the service who are subjected to this conduct. They should be able to articulate how these acts of the defendant, gotta excuse me here, I'm trying to read this off my phone and the little clip is in the way. But basically, they got to articulate. They've got to show how somebody might have been in fear for their lives, because you don't know what's in that bucket.
Sure.
Bucket of water? Yeah, it could have been a bucket of bleach. Could have been a bucket of muriatic acid.
Absolutely, lie. That was a big thing back in the day. Lie.
Oh, lie. God forbid. But yeah, I don't know that some of the people today can act on their own and think like that. I mean, we've all heard some stories about, bosses being called to the scene and having to call another boss.
Well, and you got to wonder, what are they teaching them in the police academy today? I came on in '84. I know John came on in '81, and from '81 to '84, things had changed in the police academy.
Oh, definitely. When I came on in '90, people looking at my class like, "What's going to happen to us?"
Yeah, I mean, at one point,
but I think it's the administration up there, it's the culture. I mean, you try to effect an arrest on any of those situations, it would have probably erupted into more of a problem, almost a full.
We'll get through it, and we want to thank you for listening. I want to thank my guest, John McCray, my brother-in-law. Love you to death. I want to encourage anybody who has any topic whatsoever they would like to discuss or want to comment on the show, leave us a message on our Copservations Facebook page. If you'd like to appear as a guest on our show, you can email us at metaphorcreativemedia. That's metaphorcreativemedia@yahoo.com. And as with every show, we want to honor our fallen brothers and sisters. This week, we honor Deputy Sheriff Thomas Ronquillo, Kinney County Sheriff's Office, Texas, whose end of watch was on this date, Friday, July 25th, back in 1879. Deputy Ronquillo was stabbed to death while transporting a prisoner to the county jail in Brackettville. The man had just been arrested by the deputy for creating a disturbance. During the transport, the man pulled out a knife and stabbed the deputy in the heart. A citizen who had been deputized was able to arrest the subject, and he was also cut while he attempted to subdue him. The subject fled. As he was attempting to arrest him, he was stabbed. The subject fled into Mexico, where he was later arrested and taken to jail in Monclova Viejo to await extradition. It's not known if he was ever extradited for the murder or not. The deputy was survived by his expectant wife and son. His wife gave birth to their daughter after his death. Thank you, God bless, and we'll see you next week on Cobservations.